Alright guys, so I'm going to show you how to make a tileable roof texture in Maya, and then we're going to bake that down into a low poly, uh, essentially rectangle that you can actually bring into Unity and it won't bog down your machine. So I started off really quick, just a quick flat like cube that I made. Um, doesn't necessarily need to be perfect square. I did 2 by 2 um, width and height, and then, or sorry, depth and height, and then really small, like 0.125 for the height. Um, I angled that up 10 degrees, and then, because it's for a shingled roof, and then I threw a quick bevel on there. So the very first thing that we're going to do, change the rotation to the back. You should have done that before you rotated it. Sorry about that. Um, and then throw it in the corner up here. What we're essentially going to do is fill this quadrant with shingles. So the fastest way to do that, throw it up in the right hand corner, go over to Edit, Duplicate Special, hit the box right there. It's going to pop up this window. Don't mind that. We're going to translate it along the x-axis for right now. So I started off with the dimensions of 2, so I want to do half of that so that they actually layer on top of each other. And I'm going to stick with 10 copies here. And we're going to hit Duplicate Special, and it's going to throw a whole row of them down over here. So we could just go along and just duplicate this over along the z-axis, and it'll look fine, but it'll look very uniform. So in order to combat that, we're going to just grab a few of these. It's helpful right now to switch your axis orientation over to Object. I opened up this menu by just double-clicking on the Move tool. And we're going to stagger these a little bit here. Grab a few. It doesn't matter if you overlap across this line or not. We're just trying to get some interesting flow here. So once they're sufficiently scattered, we're going to grab all of them again. You close this out. We can hop back into our Duplicate Special menu. Now instead of 1 here, we're going to swap that back to 0. We're going to want to go across the z-axis now. So this third box here, we're going to want to do a dimension of 2, because we don't want to overlap along this way, because they'll interfere with each other in z-fight. So we want to do 2, but then we also want a little bit of a gap so that it looks like there's tiles instead of the bevels just running into each other. So we're going to do 0.025. That should be sufficient to do that. And since we're going double the distance that we did before, we're going to want to decrease the number of copies to 5. So copy it over. It fills this whole front quadrant. You see that what we staggered on the right side is carried over across all the tiles. And then we can start scattering them this way. Now you could also go ahead and create your own tiles after or even before here. I already did that, so I have these tiles over here that I can bring in and try and change up the uniformity here a little bit. So the best way of doing that, I found, is to select all your tiles, go over to Display, Transform Display, and Rotate Pivots right here. What that does, you're not going to see anything from the top view, but what that does is it shows all of the pivot points of your tiles, and it also allows you to snap to those pivots. So say I want to grab this one that I made that has a notch in it. Do that, go up here, make sure that my point snapping is on, and I can snap it over to this tile here. Click the tile that I don't want under it, and then boom, it's right there. Alright, make sure that you turn that snapping off before you try and pull it out or push it in. You could also just modify the tiles at this point too. So you could just, I don't want to grab those. Start just like doing weird stuff with it. Anything you want. At this point, it's perfectly fine. You could take them into ZBrush. You could sculpt on them. Just the sky's the limit at this point. So then once everything's done, you want to hide. Oops. Object mode. You want to hide all of the pivots here. You don't want to have the ones that you moved in selected, because if you do it again, I'll show you. If you do it again, they all lose it, except for the ones that didn't have it previously. They gain the pivot. So you just want to make sure that none of them have it. It's just an aesthetic thing. I already went ahead and just gonna get rid of these. I already went ahead and made my own little variant. This is real quick. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take it and then transfer it over to all 4 of these other quadrants. Now the important thing to remember here is that you don't want to change the staggering of the tiles after you started them on this side, on the right hand side when we originally did it, because I'll show you in a little bit. If you did do that, there's a way to fix it, and I'll go over that too. So we're gonna again go over to duplicate special, and we're gonna make 1 copy this time, and we're gonna move it over 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We're gonna want to move it over 12 spots. Duplicate. Okay. So that sort of did what we wanted, sort of didn't. Easy fix though. We just take it and we drag it back. Okay. And we're gonna grab all of those now. And there's also another shortcut that you could do to duplicate things. It's Control D. You can also do Control Shift D, and that does a special transformation as well. It just moves the duplication from what you previously did again. So we moved it down, and then I just hit Control Shift D, and it moved it down another 12, which is currently not what we want to do. So I'm just going to do Control D, and then shift those over. I'm just eyeing it right now. Make sure that you're in world transform for this. You don't want to be moving along objects orientation, because that will most definitely screw it up. Alright. So I have my large roof tile here. It looks good. Again, I only spent a small amount of time on this. You guys have all the time that you want to put into it to make it look phenomenal. But that's a lot of polys. Like if I zoom in here, I intentionally made it so that there's a whole bunch. If you were to bring this into Unity, it would show it. But it may bog down your machine, especially once we get further along into the projects with a whole bunch of polygons, what have you, in the scene. So, what can we do to combat that? What I always like to do is make a low poly cube here, and we're gonna, oops, there we go. We're gonna want to scale it. Actually, we're gonna use over here. So I'm gonna just say 10 by 10. And we want to make sure that we're grabbing Okay, sorry about that, guys. So what I was talking about before was we're gonna spread out this one, like, no subdivisions cube that covers everything here. We're gonna make sure that it overlaps everything. We can scale it. Again, this could be larger, smaller. It's just 10 fits on the grid. It's always good to stick to the grid. Right, you don't want it overlapping too much, so I'm going to jump into my side view here and actually bring down the pivot. Snap that to the grid and scale it down so that's covering everything. Alright, that looks good. So now we have this random cube that's covering our roof. We actually want this to be 12 by 12. Sorry about that. We want this to be 12 by 12, not 10 by 10. Just because of the way the grid works, and we're going to be tiling this. So anywhere where it ends over here, it's going to pick up on the left-hand side. Alright. So we have that. We're going to want to make sure that it's UV'd. So hop in modeling. Everything has changed in 2016. So we're going to go over UV texturing later in the class. But this is just a quick how to bake something down. What I'm going to do here is, if I can get this window smaller. There we go. What we're going to do, we definitely want this front face here, which just so happens to be that, to be the main. Where is it? No, let's just do automatic mapping. That'll produce what we have. Never mind. Alright. UV. There we go. So what I just did is not the right thing. Okay. Again, one last try. We're going to go here, planar map. We're going to make sure that we're going to be projecting on the right axis. We want to do y-axis. Apply, there we go. We see the orange box around the whole thing. Scale that down so we have a little bit of room to fit everything else. And bring it up to the corner. Now, it's a roof, so you may want to UV the bottom. I'm imagining my roof being on a building that you can't go into, so I'm just gonna get rid of it. Okay? And now the remaining sides, I'm just gonna do a quick automatic mapping. Those two look like they're good. I'll grab these two. Rotate. Down here. And again, guys, I'm probably going to make another video later on in the course about how to UV map. I'm just doing this really quick. Okay, so I have a really quick UV map of this box. It's really important to have the UV map at this stage. You don't need to have these individual tiles UV'd. It looks almost undecipherable anyway, so you don't need to worry about it. So we have this. Now what we're going to do is we're going to grab this object, throw it into its own layer. We could call it low poly roof. Save. We're going to go File, Export Selection. I'm just going to throw this on my desktop here. Okay, and I do not have the file type installed that I need. So together we're going to find the plugin manager. Awesome. So that was Windows, Settings, Preferences, Plugin Manager. And we're going to scroll, try and find OBJ export loaded auto load. That auto load makes sure that it constantly is there whenever you open Maya, you don't have to always go in and load it again. Close it. File, export again, one last time. Desktop, I'm going to say roof low. Then say OBJ export here, export selection. We're going to hide that. And we're going to grab all of the roof that we have. Technically, anything that's not in this square we could actually just get rid of. But again, we can just keep it too. It's fine. So we're going to do File, Export Selection, Roof High, OBJ Export, Export Selection. Okay. So now we have that. We're going to jump into a program called XNormal. Those of you that were in many of Sutter's classes, he goes over XNormal. So this is going to be a refresher. And we're just going to jump into the high def file. So this is just a baking thing. So we're going to take all of the... This program takes all the high poly information that you have and basically just translates that down onto a lower, less complex model, but still faking the information from the high poly, essentially. So we're going to jump into high definition meshes. If there's a file in here, you just want to right click it and say remove mesh from list. Same thing for all these other ones, all these other side menus. So we're going to say, jump into high poly, add mesh. We're going to navigate to roof high. Open that up. We have no texture to bake, so we don't have to worry about that. Base texture is tangent normal. Basically, everything's the same. You don't have to mess with it. We're going to jump into low definition meshes. Again, add mesh. Roof low. We may fiddle with these later on. We don't have to worry about it yet, though. Use cage again. Might have to fiddle with that. Just checking these settings here. Just use the defaults for everything, basically. So baking options. We're going to want to make sure that we're sending it to the right area. I like to export as TGA. JPEG is a lossy compression file, so I don't usually like to use it. Same with GIF. If you really want to use GIF, don't use it, please. And then PNG is good. It's a little bit large files, which is fine. TGA is the standard for Unreal Engine. But Unity also accepts it. So either TGA or PNG. TIFF is a little bit too complex of a file type. A lot of things can go wrong with it. So I just avoid it. So let's just do PNG. Let's name it roof. No, not Roog. Roof. And then xnormal will automatically throw in what maps it is anyway. So we're going to just say roof. And file size. This isn't a super complex texture, so I'm going to stick with the 1024 by 1024. Edge padding, we have edges on our UV map, so let's just bump that up to 5. Don't have to worry about anything else here. We definitely want a normal map. You can check the settings on that. Just make sure it's tangent space. Hit close. If your background color is not this color, here's what the RGB value is. It's 128, 128, 255. Then we can also bake out an ambient occlusion. That's also good. Just hit defaults here. Anti-aliasing, always set that to 4. And just so you don't overwrite your files, just check that box. And all that we're going to do now is just say generate maps. It's going to bake it out real quick. Takes long. If you notice here, there's some weirdness that's happening. Those are artifacts in the normal map and subsequently the ambient occlusion map. So a way that we can combat that is either through a cage, which is a little bit more complex. I think it mainly actually has to do with how this roof is actually made. So if you look at the sideway view, there's not actually anything there. So if you're going to be getting, if your game's like has instead of corners of your roof or ending in a tower, say, and the player will actually be able to see the side of your roof, you're going to want to make it so that this is an actual like solid shape on the side. And then similarly to this front here, so it's a very drastic curve downward, which xnormal doesn't really like. It does it, as you see, but it'll look bad. So you might want to just block that off, like bring it physically down in Maya before you bake it out. But for our purposes right now, this seems to be working really well. This top area is really what matters. So we're just going to wait for that. I'm going to pause the video while that bakes the rest of that out. Okay, so this is what the ambient occlusion looks like baked out. We're going to hit close on this window. And we're just going to check. Yeah, so as you see, I have these two files here on my desktop now. Roof underscore normals, roof underscore occlusion, which is what xnormal made for me. So if I do preview here, again, it has all the data for the sides, and then we have a tileable texture up here. So let's see what that looks like. So I'm done with this huge roof. I'm going to bring back this plain box guy. Make sure that you have textured on up here in your window. And we're going to throw, where'd they put it now? Rendering. Sure, let's do a blend. So color, we don't really care about the color right now. Transparency, again, don't care. Ambient color. What we really care is bump mapping. So we want to click this little checkered box, go to File, make sure that this bump is used as tangent space normal, and then hit that arrow, go over here, roof normal, open, and then we have our quick roof here that tiles. Looks like I was off a little bit with that initial size for the tiling. Um, so if you're at this point and that happens, I'm going to put a note in the beginning that says, or at that point, that tells you exactly how big you want that tiling to that original primitive box to be. It looks like I'm only like 1 point over. It might just happen to be like the difference of how we copied it over. Yeah, you can push that. That's how it will look like. As you can see, it's Z fighting here currently. Um, I think I know why it did it. So again, I'll leave a note in the beginning, but it's because when we first made it, we didn't have an extra row up front here, so I pushed it back uh, backwards, and it doesn't tile now simply because of that. Um, if you run into that issue, you can simply like crop the. You can bring it into Photoshop later, cut down on the UVs or extend them outwards, and then everything will be a-okay. And I'll go over that if a lot of people start having this issue again. Sorry about that. But for the most part, the tiles. Let's change. Yeah, so it tiles properly left and right here, which is the super important part. Um, Again, I think it's simply because we shifted this upwards. Just be sure to overlap all of these edges here when you make the original tiling. So maybe just instead of 10, copy it to 11, and that issue will just clear right up. So yeah, we now have a roof. Looks good. Even looking straight on, it doesn't look half bad. Off to the side, you start seeing a little bit. It doesn't look realistic. But again, like if this were no, I want that on this. So let's say like it's an actual roof here. Bring it up. And then I'm going to block out like a quick little tower thing here. and that's what the player will see. Just those shingles. Alright guys, so that was making a tileable roof. If you guys have any questions, feel free to email me, DA Johnson at wpi.edu. And Dan and I will know how to help you out. Come to our office hours too. Feel free, ask questions. Alright, bye. And this is how it looks with just like that front piece blocked off. Say with like a castle wall or something. So you guys could use this to make a roof, to do stonework. There's all types of practical applications, not implications, for this sort of workflow.